I recently made a video about the vinyl copy of They Might Be Giants' album, The Spine. And I said we were in good times because that exists on vinyl. And I was right. But we're in even better times now. Now this exists on vinyl. This is, I cannot believe I'm even saying this, Long Tall Weekend on vinyl. It was never even released on CD. It was the world's first internet-only streaming or MP3 album by a major artist. And here it is on vinyl. So I'm going to open this up again, look at the contents of this box, try not to drool, and then I'll stop the video and I'll go get used to the album, which I know very well already, but I'll, listen to it a few times and I'll come back and we'll talk about the whole album, give a big review of the album, and here goes. Long Tall Weekend on vinyl. Oh, man. And I just want to let them know that I support it. That's why I keep buying these, and I love playing them. So it comes in a little bubble wrap, like the other one did, like the Spine did. Does not seem to be a gatefold. Here is the front cover. It's a slightly different cover. The original, the little icon that you got on eMusic back in the day when you bought this. The cover has always been kind of this idea, but like an orange background. Now they've changed it to blue. The cover of mine's a little bit bent there. I don't really care about stuff like that as long as it's not too bad. Okay. Don't create more damage. Careful. Okay. I'll keep the hype sticker. Cut that up later. Here we go. What's inside? It's not gatefold. Okay, we seem to have the same insert as the Spine had. All right, and here's the vinyl record. Ooh. It's glossy paper sleeve. It's probably not great for records. I'm going to replace it with a poly lined sleeve. Ugh. But I think it's all right. Okay. They Might Be Giants, Long Tall Weekend. Green on one side, red on the other side. Drinking, she thinks she's Edith Head. Maybe I know Rat Patrol. Can you believe this is on vinyl? Through Reprehensible. And then side B starts with Certain People I Could Name. And I will come back and talk more about this album, Long Tall Weekend, one of my favorites. Okay, I've listened to this album and confirmed that I still love it. And something happened while listening to it that has never happened to me while listening to a vinyl disc and probably never will again. I'll explain when I go through the songs. First, I want to mention the backstory of this album. It originally came out in July 1999, but only as downloadable MP3s on the eMusic website. It was the first time, or one of the very first times, that a band signed to a major label had done such a thing. Now everyone does it, of course. Technology has finally caught up to They Might Be Giants. If you're interested in internet history, it's fun to go back and see what eMusic was at the time. I found this 1999 page on archive.org, proudly hyping their They Might Be Giants coup. Navigate your way to the narrow width page past the animated GIFs and the helpful colorful buttons, and exclusively Long Tall Weekend was yours if you entered a credit card to join eMusic. At this time, MP3s were just becoming a thing, and eMusic was basically iTunes 4 years before that existed. On eMusic, you could buy an album for $9 or individual tracks for $1 each. This will sound familiar to anyone who used iTunes, at least during its first few years. I don't know how iTunes works these days. eMusic is still around these days too, actually, but they don't have any They Might Be Giants music anymore. I like how the 1999 era frequently asked questions page on eMusic has to explain what an MP3 is, why it takes mere minutes to download a single song, and why a bitrate of 128 is A-OK. As an aside, I first heard about MP3s in about 1996 when I went to my friend John's dorm room, and he had MP3s from the They Might Be Giants album factory showroom on his computer. I think I'd vaguely heard the term MP3 before. He was showing me his music player window and how each song was a little file and you could easily play them and skip around them and stuff. I asked how big a file for one song was, and he said about 2 to 3 megabytes. I immediately said, well, this will never catch on. Who has that kind of space? Incidentally, eMusic has never asked me to be on their board of directors. Anyway, MP3s were just bubbling into popular awareness in the late 90s. Napster started in June 1999, a month before They Might Be Giants released this album on eMusic. and the music world was just about to find out what the new reality was going to be. And it was quick. Metallica sued Napster in March of 2000, so if you didn't know what MP3s were yet, you certainly did after that became big news.
Basically equivalent to owning the original master CD that we sell in the stores.
Long Tall Weekend as an album was made up of tracks that had been recorded earlier, mostly during the mid-90s. And actually, I never really realized this until recently, or if I did, I forgot years ago. To me, it's always just been an album, and I never saw it as anything other than a cohesive, crafted whole. If an album is good, then it's good, even if it's comprised of leftovers from the past. See also Tattoo You by the Rolling Stones, and Led Zeppelin's best album, Physical Graffiti. When a compilation of songs works, it works. Long Tall Weekend came out during a period in which They Might Be Giants were kind of in the wilderness, busy in recording and touring, but not yet recovered from the disappointing fizzling out of their relationship with Elektra Records. They were restarting their older relationship with Restless Records from the 80s, but they were still in control of their digital rights of their music. When eMusic approached them, they agreed to put something together. In a 2007 interview, John Flansburgh referred to this album and its release as a humble way to find an outlet for our lesser work. Lesser work, which I guess means that I like this album more than other TMBG fans and more than the band itself. But I will die on this hill. I love listening to this album, so let's go through the track list of Long Tall Weekend and see how the different styles and moods all mix to hold the album together. And by the way, you could download a PDF from eMusic of a CD booklet. You could print it out and cut it out and fold it and burn your own CD of Long Tall Weekend and have a more conventional CD in a jewel case and everything. Each song had a little drawing by Michael Kupperman to go along with it, plus the lyrics. Kupperman redid the drawings for this 2023 release. The first song is Drinkin', a good-natured instrumental to introduce the album. One of They Might Be Giants' 8 million references to drinking. It's very tuneful and probably comes from either the John Henry or Factory Showroom album sessions. The Michael Kupperman drawing is the ominously lit guy from the album's cover art, pouring a glass of wine instead of tearing tickets. On the re-release, it's been redrawn in almost the exact same way, but there are some little stylistic differences. Look at the eyes, for example. There's also a funny thing at the bottom, the top of someone's head. It's actually part of the Edith head mask from the overlapping art for the next song from the eMusic PDF. It doesn't make sense to copy that part on the vinyl album, but it's an amusing They Might Be Giants-like thing to do. By the way, the unsettling guy on the cover was a concept that the illustrator, Michael Kupperman, maintained a fondness for. Among his work, which includes comic books and the TV Funhouse segments on Saturday Night Live, is a 2009 hardcover book cover he did with a very familiar look. Drinkin' is a good way to start the album, with John Linnell's low saxophone notes giving it an unusual and inviting texture, especially because they lead directly into the harsh staccato single piano notes that start the second song, She Thinks She's Edith Head, a classic wild TMBG rock song from John Flansburgh. It's about running into a person he knew from high school, but she has adopted a new aloof attitude, pretending to be someone of stature who's also kind of obscure. So not a common name, like she thinks she's Beyonce or something, an even more unreachable personality. The two examples of vaguely known names given in the song are Edith Head and Helen Gurley Brown. Both are indeed famous people, but not exactly names on the tip of everyone's tongues. Edith Head was a costume designer in Hollywood in the 40s and 50s. She was born Edith Posner and married a guy called Charles Head. I bet it was her name that helped her get chosen as the subject of this song, a very TMBG name. Edith was fairly well known. Here she is talking with Groucho Marx on his TV show in 1955. She won several Oscars for her costume designs. Helen Gurley Brown was an author and editor of Cosmopolitan from the 60s until the 90s, and she turned it into a successful magazine for single, liberated women. So those are the two that, in Flansburgh's words, are cultural figures we don't know a lot about. The song is great with a fun rock sound but complex, ambivalent ideas in the lyrics. This same recording and its spur-of-the-moment dramatic false ending was extensively remixed, and Flansburgh recorded a lower register, less hyperactive vocal. That version was released on the Mink Car album in 2001. Speaking of minor cultural figures from decades past, the next song is Maybe I Know, a cover of a hit by Leslie Gore from 1964. Leslie Gore was the girl who sang the #1 hit, It's My Party, and this was the follow-up. The original is a tragic tale about a guy who's running around on her, and Flansburgh switches that, singing about an elusive woman that he pitifully refuses to give up on, despite her cheating. Many They Might Be Giants songs, especially Flansburgh's maybe, have inventive 1960s-style melodies, so that's probably what attracted him to this song, because it's got 'em. Fun recording of a song with a downbeat, minor-key mood and cool organ from Linnell. The next song is Rat Patrol, one of my very favorites from this era of They Might Be Giants. It has a cold open. It starts right away with John Linnell singing alongside a piercing electric guitar. He sings in an exaggerated nasal way, like a heavy metal parody, but as a rock song, Rat Patrol is just exquisite. Very simple but effective, like all good rock songs. It features Eric Schermerhorn on blistering guitar along with Flansburgh, and dates from the factory showroom and severe tire damage era. In a way, Rat Patrol continues the 60s theme because that was the name of a TV show about Allied soldiers in Africa in World War II that aired from 1966 to 68. The lyrics are not about that though. They seem to be about a general sense of dread during some late-night car-based patrolling, as the illustration depicts. The next song is a classic TMBG experimental oddity. It's called Token Back to Brooklyn, and it's dominated by the clanging, unconventional percussion throughout it. That was done by a drummer called Yuval Gabay of the band Soul Coughing. Incidentally, the lead singer of that band, Mike Doty, later worked with They Might Be Giants on songs like Mr. Excitement from Mink Carr. Soul Coughing also recorded a CD in 1996 for Flansburgh's Hello CD subscription club. Yuval Gabay also did some drumming for John Flansburgh's Monopuff side project, and Flansburgh is in fact the only other performer on Token Back to Brooklyn. The song tells a tragic and comic story of losing one's token during a subway ride. The fare suddenly jumps up to $100, the ticket collector is a fearsome and humorless figure drinking lighter fluid, and that's about it. Just a short slice of dread and paranoia, with the percussion that sounds both industrial and organic at the same time. In a Q&A that the two Johns did for eMusic, Flansburgh joked that he usually wrote his songs in elevators just before the door opens. Sounds like it here. Short and frightening, honing in uncomfortably on the mild terror felt in a mildly worrisome situation. This recording of Token Back to Brooklyn actually wasn't new to some fans. It first appeared on the Factory Showroom CD in 1996 as a hidden track 0 that some but not all CD players could reach. An early CD Easter egg, and I think a much better approach than adding several minutes of empty space and then a hidden song all as part of the last track. Blame Nevermind by Nirvana for popularizing that unfortunate 90s trend. Another advantage of vinyl. None of those shenanigans. At least that's what I thought. More on that later. Next is a They Might Be Giants classic, Older. In case you haven't been frightened enough on Long Tall Weekend already, Older is a constant reminder that even as you're listening to this song, seconds are ticking away from your life. Just to underscore the grave importance of this reality, it's done in a sparse, melodramatic style, like a rock band performing some angry Russian classical piece. It's mostly Linnell singing a cappella over occasional heavy guitar and/or drum bursts, and Flansburgh angrily growling, "Time is marching on, and time is still marching on." Older is all about an inescapable dread, one that the band, Linnell certainly, sounds entirely dispassionate about, a classic TMBG approach. The band re-recorded Older for the Mink Carr album in a different arrangement and with less forcefulness, but keeping the overall message. One thing I like about Long Tall Weekend is that it's sequenced very well. From the scary and incessant march of time in Older, we go to a song in which time moves really slowly. Operators are standing by. Depicts the soul-crushing inanity of working in a call center. The ladies in this office kill time and just want the day to end. The unimportant mundane details of the working hours, cigarettes, coffee, kicking a foot in a shoe absent-mindedly, talking about their boyfriends, getting brief and low-level entertainment looking at a picture of a Mobius strip, are recounted in all their dull detail. And then the boss comes in and lightly admonishes them to get back to work. Yawn. The operators are standing by, doing very little of value at work, and by extension, we can infer in their lives. The song itself is short, less than a minute and a half, but it's very pretty. Flansburgh sings it sensitively, and Linnell plays Hammond B3 organ. Next is Dark and Metric, another highlight of the album. It's sung by Linnell and seems to be about a guy living in some town where nothing much happens, at least not to him. The lyrics are sparse, but are mostly about how there are no modes of transportation around. Plus, a town that is dark and metric sounds like some small community in Canada or Norway or something, where there is little sunlight in winter, but the metric system is used. I am bad at interpreting lyrics though, so I don't know. Musically, the song has a gentle feel, highlighted by a twangy slide guitar solo from New York-based guitarist J. Sherman Godfrey. All of that a counterpoint to the cheerfully delivered downer lyric, "Just because you're smiling doesn't mean you haven't drowned." Dark and Metric was actually first mentioned in an interview by Linnell back in 1995, discussing sets of lyrics that Flansburgh had written that Linnell then wrote music for. Linnell also wrote the next song, Reprehensible, but Flansburgh sings it. It's one of the longer songs on Long Tall Weekend, over 3 minutes. Again, it juxtaposes a musical style with incongruous lyrics. The verses are quiet and haunted and fragile, and the protagonist is describing the voices in his head at night and how he commits unspecified evil deeds, but can't remember them. Then the chorus is sort of hammy, like a stage musical kind of, and it's almost like he's bragging when Flansburgh stridently sings how he's indefensible, indestructible, reprehensible. The exact nature of his heinous activity is kept mysterious, but it seems bad. And it's hard to tell if he's more ashamed or proud. Certain People I Could Name is next, and it's even longer, almost 3.5 minutes. It's a gentle piano song from Linnell. It was recorded during the factory showroom sessions. The lyrics are about watching TV and having certain characters, even extras at the edge of a scene, remind you of someone you know. The first verse is during the watching of a movie by the legendary Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, which refers to something that really happened to Linnell and inspired the song. John Linnell has lots of songs that repurpose mundane, relatable conversations as lyrics. I love it when he does this, and this is an excellent example. There's a sudden style shift next on the album to the weirdo country hoedown called Counterfeit Faker, not related to They Might Be Giants' song Counterfeit Fake. Counterfeit Faker even has banjo and fiddle, both by Linnell, to go with the acoustic guitar and the cello. No drums on this one. I'm not sure quite what type of person the lyrics are describing, but it's someone who seems to have exasperated the protagonist. The counterfeit faker carries a grudge, and the damage he's done, whatever it is, can't even be measured. It may be about Flansburgh's actual brother, Earl, an anti-nuclear activist and anarchist who goes by Paxus Culta, and who has notoriety, and a Wikipedia page, of his own. John Flansburgh doesn't talk about his brother much when asked, but there seems to be some complicated bad blood between them. As he sings, "I loved him like a brother, I loved him ambivalently." Maybe Flans is singing about himself in the third person from the point of view of his brother, Paxus Calta. But I'm always wrong about song interpretations, so who knows. Next is the longest song on the album, and one of the longest in the band's entire career, 4.5 minutes. Who are they, Genesis? It's They Got Lost, and this is the second time it was released. Another version appeared on the live 1998 album, Severe Tire Damage, but it was a fast rock song there. This studio version is much slower and sort of bluesy. The lyrics are full of self-references to They Might Be Giants. It's a sort of Spinal Tap-esque story of the band trying to drive to a radio station for an interview but getting lost. Each comical twist of the tale is told in excruciating but slapstick detail, like John peering at a map and expecting to see a big B outside because the map has a big B here. And then the other John points out he's not looking at a map, he's looking at a fast food wrapper. Besides the band, the two Johns and the band members are all mentioned by name. Extremely silly. I think it was an odd but bold decision to record such an excruciatingly slow version of this song in which, pointedly, nothing really happens. I always laugh when I hear it, even though I've heard it a million times, because Linnell's singing is so deadpan, and the music's so sorrowful and sympathetic. Ultimately, though, I think it works better as a faster rock song. Next is Lullaby to Nightmares. The title and part of the lyrics were inspired by the 1952 song Lullaby of Birdland, but they've been They Might Be Giant-sized. They both have the line Whisper Low, but where the original asks, "Have you ever seen 2 turtle doves?" this one asks, "Have you ever seen a bloody egg?" At least that's what it sounds like, but both the 1999 and the 2023 lyric sheets say bloody head. I think it's egg. A different recording of Lullaby to Nightmares was first released in September 1993 on a CD by Hello the Band, produced by John Flansburgh. The bloody egg line is even more clear on that version. Hello the Band was a project from Joshua Freed, who also did remixes for They Might Be Giants, including The World's Address and She's Actual Size. He sings that 93 version and apparently wrote the lyrics, but on Long Tall Weekend, only Flansburgh and Linnell are credited as writers on this song. The words seem to basically be about nightmarish things, in a sort of Halloween sense. Bats' wings and strange shadows and, for some reason, dying elephants. Again, I don't get too into interpretation, but I do like the way the words sound poetically. I also like the fulsome horn section, played by Linnell on sax, plus Kurt Hoffman and Frank London on sax and trumpet. This version of Lullaby to Nightmares, sung by Flansburgh, was recorded during the John Henry sessions. Next is another highlight, for better or worse, one of the more memorable tracks on Long Tall Weekend. And if you tend to like atonal and strange things, you'll love On Earth My Nina, like I do. It's just Linnell singing, a cappella, a set of truly obtuse lyrics. And the song's backstory shows that the band has never, to this day actually, shied away from putting unusual and experimental things on their albums. In this case, there was a then unreleased TMBG song called Thunderbird, a classic John Linnell pop rock song. Linnell was listening to Thunderbird backwards, and his own backwards voice sort of sounded like words, so he wrote down what it sounded like, played Thunderbird backwards again through headphones, and sang along. Kind of what Camper Van Beethoven did several times in the 80s, build a new song by playing an existing one of their own backwards. So, disconnected from any obligation to make any sense, we have John Linnell passionately singing things like, "The sparrow wants a morbid arrow," and "Here's a quarter, maybe I'll buy the whirlwind that always keeps me yearning." Wrestling a surreal pathos from accidental words, kind of like William Burroughs and Brian Geison's cut-up technique. On Earth My Nina was even more mysterious in 1999 than now because Thunderbird hadn't been released. It was being played live, but it wasn't on an album until The Spine in 2004. And then, finally, On Earth My Nina made a millimeter more sense at least. Linnell kept the spirit of that song alive when, almost 2 decades later, he watched an Aerosmith video with the sound off and wrote a song around what it looked like they were singing. The great Last Wave, a tale for another time. On Earth My Nina, a song I actually get in my head after listening to it. I guess a great melody works in either direction. From that Dada-esque weirdness, we go to the last song on the original release of Long Tall Weekend, the Edison Museum. This recording had already been released on an obscure Various Artists vinyl album called Edisongs in 1991. There, the performance credit was Nick Hill and John Linnell, but produced by They Might Be Giants. The Edison Museum was written by Linnell and Brian DeWan, a friend of Linnell's who, among other things, built the contraption on the front cover of the band's second album, Lincoln. The song was sung by Nick Hill, a DJ on the independent New Jersey radio station WFMU, which put together the Edisongs album. If his singing voice sounds familiar, it may be because he also sang the parts of Fingertips about I Hear the Wind Blow. To be honest, for all these years, I just thought Flansburgh was singing the Edison Museum. It was only when I got this vinyl LP and read the liner notes that I learned the truth. In my defense, it is pretty Flansburgh-esque, right? The song is all about, well, the Edison Museum. Sort of. There is something officially called the Edison Museum, but it's in Texas. These lyrics explicitly are about the place in New Jersey where Thomas Edison lived and worked. So really it's the Edison National Historic Site, which was renamed in 2009 to the Thomas Edison National Historic Park. It's made up of Edison's house, Glenmont, and the surrounding property. The song mentions several notable things Edison invented or improved: light bulbs, motion pictures, and sound recordings. It also characterizes the house as haunted, with imposing towers full of the ghosts of its ex-employees. The 1991 release included an ending that was edited out for Long Tall Weekend, a marimba solo that continued as the chorus was sung again. The band later recorded a new version in 1996 at the Edison place itself, on all-acoustic wax cylinder equipment, just like in the 1800s. They released this version later online. The Edison Museum is a good album closer. It just sounds like one, but remember how I said something happened that had never happened to me before when I first listened to this album? There is a bonus track on this re-release, and I hadn't noticed it listed on the back cover, nor on the record label, and I wasn't paying attention to the record player when I first played this LP. And I knew this album well, so I knew it was over. So I couldn't believe it when the album didn't in fact end. The song Dr. Evil from Austin Powers came on. I was surprised and shocked by a bonus track years after that was a thing that savvy listeners should know about. And on a record, not a CD. I can't imagine that ever happening again. We'll see, but that may have been a once-in-a-lifetime event. I knew the song Dr. Evil, both from having watched Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me 100 million times, but also because a friend gave me this full version on a mix CD in the early 2000s. I generally don't care for bonus tracks, really. Put them out, but on a separate release, I say. Leave the original album distinct, but in this case I guess it sort of fits. It's a stray track from the era, and this is an album with peculiarities anyway. And I like the song, and its James Bond-like spy theme style, but it still feels out of place to me. Not the closer that Edison Museum is. Dr. Evil is sung by Flansburgh's wife, Robin Goldwasser, although she isn't credited on the album. It was partially recorded in their kitchen and was meant to be a demo for some famous singer to record for the movie, but the producers used the demo as is instead. By the way, the Edison Museum doesn't have its original PDF art reproduced on the 2023 version of Long Tall Weekend. Instead, we get the same drawing as the opening song, Drinkin'. There's nothing wrong with the original, so I don't know why it's like that. Dr. Evil doesn't get its own drawing either, maybe because everyone already has an image come to mind when you hear the title. So, that's the album in all its glories and surprises. A great piece of work to listen to, start to finish. It can stand proudly shoulder to shoulder with the more conventional TMBG albums. A little more about this 2023 reissue. After reattaching my jaw after I read the email from the band's mailing list that this was happening, I ordered Long Tall Weekend on vinyl, international shipping charges be damned. As far as I can tell, this re-release was only on vinyl, not even CD. It looks great because Michael Kupperman redid the cover art. I like the change from orange to blue. It looks nice and makes the vinyl record cover distinct. There were actually some CDs made of this album in the eMusic days, and there were cover variations then. It was for some limited edition promo CDs that were given out to fans at a They Might Be Giants show in '99 promoting the release of Long Tall Weekend. That one had the song titles printed around the edge of the CD, and On Earth My Nina is just called Nina there. Another promo CD was given to people attending an event hosted by Wired magazine in 1999. It used a cheap black and white version of the cover art. That CD label says all songs are written by They Might Be Giants, ignoring the fact that one song is a 60s cover and 2 others were co-written by collaborators. So the first wide public physical release of this album then, unimaginably, is a full vinyl LP. Nice big reimagined cover art and all the song illustrations on the back cover on an olive green background. I've seen another updated version of the cover art online, but I don't know what it's for. In this one the band's name is smaller and you can see the roll of tickets better. I think I'd prefer this one for the vinyl release. Oh well. The thick inner sleeve has a big version of the drawing of They Might Be Giants driving around getting lost on it. It looks like they are so lost that they've managed to drive both forward and backwards in time, after civilization has crumbled but there are still dinosaurs. Maybe it's in a dystopian future where dinosaurs have re-evolved in the absence of humans. Except for They Might Be Giants. They're still there, still looking for that radio station. The other side of the inner sleeve has all the lyrics, but not to Dr. Evil, the bonus track. So you can sit back, play the LP, and enjoy its jaunty pop stylings and get dragged down by the unceasing fright and cynicism of the lyrics, like any TMBG fan likes to do. And there's the insert showing other They Might Be Giants vinyl records you can buy from the Idlewild label. And finally, there was a download card in my LP for WAV files of the album from Precision Pressing. So, a very welcome release of an album that has always had a home in my heart. My copy is well made and sounds great. I haven't played the WAV files I downloaded, but I've certainly played the LP several times. I totally support the re-releasing of classic TMBG on vinyl, especially the stuff like this that's never been on that format. I have several and all are well made. There are many more opportunities in the band's catalog, so I always hope for more email announcements of newly released vinyl records. We record-buying TMBG fans live in good times. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you agree or disagree with. See you on Earth, my Nina.